Hello, everyone. I'm just going to wait for a few more minutes before I dive into my little presentation. But thanks, everyone, for joining me. I usually do a weather report at the start of my thing, so I'm just looking outside. There's been a bit of chainsaw action going on. Actually, Penny, I might make you co-host, so if someone wants to join and I miss them.
Yeah, so, now?
Yeah, so I think you're a co-host there. So if anyone comes, feel free to have them join. So back to my weather report. So a little bit grey outside. The weather report in Bali, it sort of rains and then it doesn't rain and then it starts to rain and then the sun comes out. And there's a few loud motorbikes flying past and that sort of stuff. So that's pretty much how it rolls. So I hope everyone's had a great Christmas, a great start to the new year. And one of the things for me with the new year too is about not just charging into the new year, is like easing into it with the intention of maybe hitting your straps by the time you get to the end of January. Because sometimes we can go a little bit too fast at the front end of January and sort of lose a little bit of our grace. So that's my little front end tip. Okay. So thanks everyone for joining us. So the presentation I'm going to do, and I've got a slide presentation I'll put up. I love my little PowerPoints. So that will go up shortly. And what I wanted to do is talk about writing a book. And Penny, that you'll see on the screen there, was the inspiration for the concept that we've come up with. And I'll talk to you about the concept that we've come up with as we go into the presentation as well. In fact, I'm going to open the presentation up now and people can join as they want. I'm also going to record this presentation. So if you do know anyone that might have been interested in seeing this and has missed it, then you can pass it on to them as well. So this is my goal. I don't know why I came up with 5 books, but I just decided back in 2012, I'd been coaching at that stage for about 5 years. For those that don't know my background, I was in the military for 14 years, retired as a major, worked on Olympic Games around the world for 5 years doing security consulting. So very strategic background. Then I was 25 deep in the coaching, did some NLP, hypnotherapy, bit of Tony Robbins stuff. And, you know, I'd also read, probably by 2012, I'd probably read about, I don't know, 200, 300 books on personal development. So I was interested to write about happiness. And that was the first book that I came up with. So I ended up meeting my 10-year goal there in 2021. I published Decision Making Mastery. So just those are all of the books there. And is one of the books on the Kindle there, because I'll talk a little bit about getting things into ebooks as well. So I just wanted to give you some street cred at the front end to say that I've written a few books. So I have some experience in the do's and don'ts, what's worked and what hasn't worked, and what's most likely to get someone across the line. So I can talk a little bit about that. So I talked about Penny. Penny and I were having a conversation last year, and she's been poking me to do some sort of training on writing books. And it was interesting, and somewhere in that conversation, I don't know how it came up, was this idea of a weekend book club. And it was the idea about reading books like a smaller book. So what I'm going to talk about is I'm going to go through how to write a book. Then I'm going to explain this concept of the weekend book club. And it's really about coaching someone through it, but it's got a back end. If you could just mute, if I can just mute everyone, if you could do that for me, Penny, that'd be great. So I'll talk about the weekend book club, and then once I've finished that, there'll be about 5 or so minutes. Then if anyone's got any specific or general questions about writing books, then I'll open the floor up to Q&A. Okay. So that's what we're here for. I wanted to start at the front end about why to self-publish. And, you know, one of the things that holds people back and can hold people back indefinitely is trying to find someone to publish them. Like I went through that with my first book, and I was, sending out proposals to different agents and different publishing houses and all that sort of stuff. And I realized I could wait around for someone to decide they wanted to publish my book, or I could get started. And I'm someone who's more interested in getting started. And now it's more easy than ever to self-publish. The other thing with self-publishing, you can, do it how you want to do it. You don't have someone else telling you how you ought to do things. So for me, that was one of the things. And I realized as I went through trying to get someone to publish me that they were more interested in how many followers I had, what my marketing campaign was, as opposed to the content quality of my book and my concept. So getting published is very much tied in with how good a marketing proposal you have, and how big a following you've got right from the get-go. So if you don't have a decent profile or a decent 10,000 plus emailing list, a little bit harder to get published. So I'm about self-publishing, and I'm about leveraging that self-publishing for my business. So these are the 6 parts I'm going to go through, and this is probably a 45-minute presentation. So I'll go a little bit deep, but I won't go as deep as if I was prattling on for a couple of hours. So obviously getting started, like this is the biggest thing for me is, and you've probably seen books starting with why. What's the guy who wrote that book, Seneca, whatever. Getting really clear about what your why is, because it's actually hard and there's actually quite a bit of effort goes into writing a book. So if you don't have a decent why, you don't have enough fuel in the tank, inspiration pulling you along. And I always suggest that inspiration's better than motivation. Motivation's where you've got to kick your own butt. Inspiration pulls you along. If someone is writing a book just to make money, like 6 figures and all of that sort of stuff, again, you might write a pretty lame book, or you might write a pretty market-oriented book, but I'm more about, coming from self. And, for the people who join me for the writing program, I'm going to recommend a couple of books to get started. And one of them is Big Magic by Elizabeth, what's her name? Who wrote Eat, Pray, Love? And Elizabeth Gilbert. And she talked about when the muse comes and like plants that idea. Like I like the idea of just feeling this compulsion to write about a particular topic. Something grabs you. I was talking with a client the other day, and I'm talking about this concept of alignment. And I'm sort of saying, are you aligned with your values? Are you aligned body, mind, and spirit? Are you aligned with source? Are you aligned? And there was a number of components for me to get in alignment so that we sort of, move through life with ease and grace, and we manifest at a higher level. And she said, are there any good books to read on? And I'm like, I haven't found one. I might just have to write the book myself. So for me, that was like a bit of a moment of an offering of how about writing about this particular thing. So that's the first thing is, getting clear about why you want to write a book, and I encourage people to be less caught up in, so I can sell lots of copies and make lots of money. And this is what I'm also interested in, is coming from a place of service. And, I have one of my clients, and she's quite a well-known, she writes for The Guardian, and she's quite well-known in Australia. She's written a few books and that sort of stuff. One of her books was turned into a Netflix series and that sort of stuff. And she'd written her book, and she'd written the first draft, gave it off to the publisher. They didn't like the first version. And then, I talked about her getting it back on track. And I said, don't try, because she was trying to write a book that would academically be acceptable. It was about Stoicism. And I encouraged her, like, let go of this idea of trying to impress the academics about Stoicism and write a book that serves the individuals. And particularly in this time where people are going through a lot of challenges, there's a lot of uncertainty. lot of flip-flopping on our planet, like coming from a place of service and writing a book that helps people use this philosophy of stoicism, like, is coming from a place of service. So when she wrote from that place, you know, it got across the line, and the book's published now. So that's the other thing I encourage is, you know, write your book as if you're writing for one individual and you want to change that person's life. Structuring your book. You know, one of the ways I love doing is whatever this concept is called, whether it's fishboning or brainstorming or whatever the corporate speak is for this, essentially a blank piece of paper. And you're like, so for me, if it's this, thanks, Penny. If it's this alignment, I put in the middle, like, you know, I might even have a question there. How do we come into a greater sense of alignment? I might even put in there, what is alignment? And then I just start going all these ideas and I'm just putting them all over the place. And I come up with as many ideas as I can. And I've probably got, just trying to think if I've got some examples here in my shelf. I've got some examples around the place, blank piece of paper, and then I start clumping the concepts together. And I might get different colored highlighting pens because I'm starting to go, oh, these ideas, they form a sort of a theme. These ones form a theme, these ones. And that's how I start putting the structure together of the book. You know, there's like different colors representing ideas that have a theme that's common amongst them. So I might from that come up with 6 sections to the book. So I'm starting to get a sense of, okay, this is a book. It's got the front end, it's got the back end, and there's these 6 central themes. And then I want to weave those together in a natural order. I eventually want to get together, like this is what I create as a spreadsheet, which has, you know, for instance, here there's the front end matter, there's a section mindset, and this goes on to have another 4 or 5 sections and that sort of stuff. I write down what subjects are going to be there and they become chapters. And I say here what target word count I want to do from, and then what the actual word count is. So this one was for, I'm trying to even think which book this was. But this was going through and I get to the end and what I do is I track how many words. So it gives me a sense of how many words I'm putting together for it. So again, I want to, you know, see after each time I write, I put those words in, oh, I'm getting closer and closer to my, you know, principal target words. So that's a good tool to use and a practical tool to use. Next one, staying on the path. And this is where most people sort of fall off. This, you know, obviously having a plan makes it easier to achieve your goals. So we've already started putting the plan together by having our spreadsheet. We've already mapped out the sections. We've already got a sense of how many words I need to write for each of those. We get a sense of how much time do I need to allocate to write that particular chapter. So the plan's starting to come together. I'm going to bang on about scheduling writing sessions, and I love this, and I can't remember who the author was, but it was a prominent author. I don't know whether it was a Stephen King or someone at that sort of caliber. And someone was asking them about, you know, do you write when inspiration comes? Yeah. I always write when inspiration comes. Fortunately for me, it comes at 8 a.m. Monday to Friday. So this is the difference between amateur and going pro when it comes to doing something. It's like, if I sit around and wait for the inspiration, it may come one week, it may not come. What I want to do, and I've put that fire sign down there and the why there, because I want to, the stronger our why is, the more we're likely to show up for that. But this is one of the most important things I have in writing a book to determine whether it gets done or not, is I block out the frickin' time on my calendar. Like, I'm old school, I have this A4 piece of paper and I do my calendar writing there. You know, and this is a teaching, whether it's a Tony Robbins teaching or whoever else in the personal development space. And it's essentially saying, until we schedule something and block out the time for it, we haven't made it a priority and it's unlikely to get attended to. So I'm a big fan of having specific time to write the book. Mostly for my books, I write between 8 and 10 o'clock on a Friday. Currently, I've got long-term clients that are occupying that slot. So I find a time when I'm in my most creative space. And for me, that's in the mornings. That's between, say, 8:30 to 12:30. So I want to utilize that time. And I just show up. Because I've worked my plan out, I know what chapters I need to write. I just sit down and I write a chapter. And I space it out over the course of, the book writing we're going to talk about is over 4 months. But I would generally write a book over the course of a year and then sort of, push it out, market it, use it, create product around it for a year. And then the next year, write a book again. And that's how I did my 10 years. Writing book, off writing book, marketing, writing a book and that sort of thing. So what I suggest is the same time, because what we do is we start anchoring our body, our mind, our psychology. Oh, it's book writing time. So our body's already starting to get in and it's already anchored to that book writing thing. I flip to my schedule. Okay, this is the chapter I'm writing about today. And what I do is I just write a Word document, have one Word document per chapter. And I would just write. And I'd write for 2 hours, bang, bang. And then I'd put it away. And I wouldn't touch it again until I'd written all the chapters. So all I want to do to start with is just write a chapter a week. And, by the end of my, say, a book that's got 25 chapters, it takes me 6 months to put that together. I'm just writing a chapter a week. Then what I do once I've finished writing for my 6 months is I put all those chapters into a single Word document, and then I start going through it. And I usually do 2 to 3 edits where I go through that whole process. Because what I find is, because it's a 6-month process, I might forget what story I told in month 2, I might repeat the same story, same metaphor, same analogy in month 6. So by putting them all together, and I might block out a whole day or 2 days, I might block out, and I just go through that whole thing, sit it aside for a few weeks, come back again, go through it. And after I've gone through it a few times, then I might hand it off to the editor to have a shot at it. So next theme is editing, cover, layout. Such a beautiful picture of a little puppy there desiring some help. I know when I can write a pretty good book. I would say a very good book, because I've done so much writing. I've been writing a blog since 2005. So even by the time I came to write my first book, it was published in 2012, started writing 2011. I'd already been writing for about 6 years. So I built that muscle up. So, I knew I could write a very good book, but, once I put it into professional hands, then it went up to the next level. Obviously, to put it into professional hands, there's a monetary cost to that. So, the first book, I think I paid about 5,000 Aussie dollars for an editor. Second book was 5,000 US, and that was discounted. She was a more advanced editor, professional editor. She'd been the editor for the movie What the Bleep with Joe Dispenza in it, the newsletter that they put out. She was the editor for that. She'd written her own books, co-authored a couple of books. So that was the range of price on editors can, be pretty broad. So that's definitely one of the expenses for putting the book together. And again, with this weekend book club, I've got a concept to lower that expense. What you need to do so you can get this thing and self-publish it, and I'm going to talk about self-publishing it on Amazon, as that's the easiest platform to utilize. I'm not a big fan of Amazon. They're a bit of a monolithic organization, and they've got a bit of a monopoly thing going. But in the book writing, which is where they started, I'm willing to stay in that lane, and I'm tuning with the resources they've got. So there's 3 pieces that you need to have. This first piece goes for the Kindle book. You just need a book cover there, and that comes up as the thumbnail picture. Second thing, you need a book cover, and that's obviously got the front of the book. It's got what goes on the spine, got the back of the book, and it's got the space left here for the barcode. And then the third one is like having the book laid out in a PDF document. And again, like, I have professional support for this because there's pages that are purposely left blank. You've got at the top of pages, this sort of thing for each of the chapter changes. So trying to do this stuff yourself, you probably could, but way too much work. I'm fortunate, my partner, Ferry, she's a graphic designer and she's done all the graphic work for my last 3 books. So she puts all this stuff together. And she's going to be supporting the book club authoring show. This was an interesting one. So this was the second book, the guidebook to optimum health, and the first book, the guidebook to happiness. You saw the theme, you saw the font there. So Ferry designed a formula or designed a front cover, which is in alignment with the other one, because I wanted to create a book series called the Guidebook series. Guidebook to health, happiness, success, relationships, spirituality. That was the concept when I had my 5 books in mind. I went along to a presentation and it was an extremely successful author. He was some multi-millionaire Canadian dude, used to sell a bunch of product from the stage and all that sort of stuff. And I chatted to him and I showed him my book and he said, "What do you want out of it?" I said, "Well, I'd like it to help me, get more coaching clients, to pick up keynote speaking, to get me corporate speaking gigs, to help with workshops, all that sort of stuff." And he said, "You need to have your own mug on the front cover." So that was the professional advice, and that definitely served me well, because once I put my mug on the cover of these things, I had things like someone is in a corporate meeting and the boss mentions something about a weekend personal development thing they want to offer their staff, and does anyone know any decent speakers, presenters, trainers, and that sort of stuff? And one of my clients said, "Oh yeah, Mike, coach Carl Massy, he's really good." And she pulls out the book and drops it, there. I've got my picture there, so there's already that personal thing. I think I look relatively healthy in that picture and that sort of thing. So that started the conversation, and I ended up getting work with that company. So that was a bit of professional advice that served me well. A little bit more on self-publishing, like I said, like this Amazon show, the self-publishing is just following the bouncing balls. You've got this KDP, Kindle Direct Publishing. It allows you to do the paperbacks as well as the Kindle books. So it links those up. So when your Amazon pages, it links all that stuff up. You can, change the pricing around. You can do all sorts of stuff. It's really simple. Once you've got those files made up, so once Ferry, that's my partner's name, provides me with those 3 digital pieces of content, I'm just uploading that stuff and then filling in, the stuff on, what's the title, what's the subtitle, and all that sort of stuff. So there's only about 4 or 5 pages of stuff you need to fill in. And that Kindle book, can be uploaded in a pretty short space of time. So, again, super easy. The downside, so that's my book on Kindle. I've got a nice beat up Kindle that I've had for years and years. Now it doesn't even start. I have to put a magnet over it to get it started. But one of the things with Kindle, yes, it's easy, but that means that some of the quality of the books that are getting uploaded to Kindle are pretty crap. I don't know whether you've had the experience of reading books and there's grammatical errors all the way through it. There's, punctuation errors, like, poor proofreading, poor editing. Because it's easy entry, that means a lot of people put pretty crappy stuff there. So I'm a big fan of making sure you do a professional book. You definitely have decent proofreading done on it. Even if you don't get professional editing, and editing is more about structure. An editor doesn't necessarily do proofreading. An editor might come back and say, "Oh, I hear you're trying to be funny here, but you're too funny and there's too much of it. So get rid of this stuff." Or your metaphor doesn't make sense. Like, have you got another example you could use? So that's the editing. Or put this chapter before this one, or this section, needs to shift around. But when it gets into the proofreading stuff, you can just find a good person. Like the last book I wrote, I just got a colleague of mine, I know she's an excellent, reader, proofreader. She's got fine attention to detail. And I think I just paid her like $750 to do the proofreading. So again, finding someone to do that saved me a bunch of money there. The other thing with using Amazon is you get print on demand. So say I'm going to do a presentation. I've done a few presentations over the Middle East. I just, order on Amazon 100 books shipped to the Middle East. So I don't need to carry boxes around. I don't need to store them in my garage. The first book, The Guidebook to Happiness, I thought I was doing smart stuff. I got books printed in Vietnam, got some shipped to Singapore because I had an agent there, got them shipped to Bali because I had them in Perry Plus bookstores here, and then got some shipped to Australia. But then there was all the importing stuff to go through. It was a total pain in my butt. And then I've got, boxes of books, storing those. So Amazon now, I just order, say, 30 books. So I get one box of books, put them away in the cupboard, and it's easy peasy. So that's another good thing about the self-publishing and using someone like Amazon that can print on demand. It makes it super easy. Okay, the business part of things, so it does make sense to monetize this book. It is a good business platform. My smallest book like this, The Successful Mind, it's a pretty thin book. I think it's 100 pages. Yeah, 98, 99 pages. So, smallish book. So I can get that printed on demand by Amazon. I think it's like $1.50 or something like that, plus postage. So I can get 20 or 30 books and I just give those out. So again, what I'm doing with my business, I'm giving these things out as a piece of content so someone can get to know me, establish rapport with me. I've gifted them something, so there's a bit of rapport already going there, and that may lead to some future business. And I'll show you the metrics of that concept shortly. So for me, like front end, back end, front end is selling units. To make $20,000, I pretty much need to sell 20,000 books, which is not easy. Takes a whole lot of effort and a whole lot of time. So that's the front end, selling books. I'm more interested in, and I'm all about strategy. What do I create at the back end that leverages this book, which has a much higher return on investment for a lot less effort? Because the back end can be positioning yourself as an expert, particularly with a good professional book. You automatically put yourself above the other people in your profession that don't have a book. You're an author. So there's so many things at the back end. And I mean, the thought that just came to mind was some of these things where, people get approached to be part of a book writing thing where there's 30 authors and they all get a chapter in that book and that book gets presented and everyone has to pay an amount of money to be into that program. They get so many books, and because they've purchased so many books, 30 people purchase 200 books each, so there's 6,000 books sold, so therefore you become a best-selling author. Like, all of that's horse shit as far as authenticity of someone saying, oh, I'm an author, I'm a best-selling author because I've been with some scam and I've written one chapter of a book. For me, that's pretty inauthentic. So again, that's another thing with, writing a book, is making sure that there's that authenticity piece to it. So, here's an example of, the Guidebook to Happiness. So I get a commission from Amazon for sale, like I get $1 or $2 max. If I sell that directly, so if I order books in, I sell it, I might be able to sell it $15. Then I get a bigger commission, but I'm selling less units, maybe if I'm selling them myself, unless I've got a platform. I used to be involved, and I've still got books at the Practice Yoga Center in Bali, so I do have a little bit of turnover of books there. But this is what I'm interested in. And I sort of, in the early days of that book, had that at the Practice. Someone reads that book and it leads to a $5,000 coaching contract with them. So that's, for me, the back end. I've got to sell 5,000 copies to get what I got out of selling one copy to the right person. So this is this is where the smart business is at. So it's like, I don't care about becoming a best-selling author. I don't need that specifically for me to have a business, a successful business at the level of success that I want to have it. I'm just smarter at how I do it at the back end. So that's the thing about going into this book writing. It's, as you're going through the book writing process, already starting to think about the back end. Am I going to create a presentation out of this? Am I going to create a workshop out of this? Am I going to create an online workshop, a live workshop? Am I going to create a hybrid of it? Am I going to be a keynote speaker? Like, there's so many things that can be leveraged at the back end of this, if done well. Getting on podcasts, you're more likely to get on a podcast if you've got some content. You might be able to offer some free content with these books. So then that sort of is more likely to get picked up by someone podcast interviewing. You get more people listening to you. They sign up, you build up your emailing list. All of that sort of stuff is the back end type thing. So that's the writing book thing. I'll go through my little spiel on the Weekend Book Club, and then I'll open it up for any specific questions. So what we came up with is, I like the idea of teaching people to write books, but I also know that I want to help people at the back end. And how can we actually get at the back end? And I'm also passionate about getting people to actually read and go deeper, rather than reading, Insta posts and Facebook posts and all that sort of stuff, or reading, say, a magazine headline, or, I want people to go down and really understand, get to the essence of the subject, so then they can actually put it into play. And then they're more likely, if they read the right books, to be able to join dots because they've understood the concept rather than just the tagline of a particular subject. So I'm big about how can we get more people reading. And Penny was saying, most people probably struggle to get past reading a 100-page book. So we came up with this idea in our conversation. Yeah, what about if we encourage people to read a 100-page book over the course of a weekend? And then we said, okay, that would be good, because if we could help authors, write a book which is only 100 pages, it's a stretch goal, not a snap goal. They can get over the line with their first book, and that's going to give them the confidence and also the tools to be able to write their second, third, fourth book. So I'm like, yeah, I think these things can come together. So I started writing a concept paper on it, and Penn and I bounced it back and forth, and we got to that thing. So this is the author thing. So I coached through the process of, over 12 months of how to write a book and then how to leverage on the back of that book, creating this back end. I had this idea of, if we have 10 people doing this together, what we can do is actually share, say, the proofreading. So I don't need to pay someone to proofread. I just need to read and proof one of the other people in the group. So again, we bring back down the expenses of proofing, finding that editor. In our group of 10, maybe everyone has to read 2 other books, proofread it, edit it. So again, we've put it down and we've started that collaborative process. Then there's strategies. Even getting 10 reviews, like, how hard it is to get 10 people to read your book and actually write a review on Amazon? Not so easy. So I think if we have a collaborative group where everyone's supporting everyone, you automatically get 10 decent reviews, and you're off to a good head start in that. I talked about stretch goal, not a snap goal. I want people who've got an entrepreneurial spirit to join this, so they're actually interested in the brainstorming around how can we make this Weekend Book Club even more successful? How can we get more readers in and all that sort of stuff? So I want like a group of people, because my feeling is the last few years have been a lot of fear, a lot of uncertainty, which has suppressed a lot of creativity. When we're in fear, we're not creative. So I think there's a lot of people sort of with this creativity just bubbling up. So I want to get the right group of people together to let this, creative energy sort of burst forth, eruption style, volcano style, and come together, mastermind. How can we support each other and all that sort of stuff? So for me, I think the way forward on our planet is collaboration and, working together rather than competition. So I want to support that sort of business philosophy as well. And then just help people create an appropriate back end. So for the readers, this idea of like a 100-page book, and the idea of they can read it over a weekend, So we actually help people set up, what does a weekend getaway look like? We have videos to tell them how to set it up. We encourage them to set up a 2-day getaway, ditch your family, ditch everything, go away, get into the mountains, light some candles, put some incense there and read this book. And then part of the offering for those will actually be, they'll get access to the author, but also practical activities. So they read the 100-page book, plus there's practical activities because we want integration. Knowledge without experience doesn't lead to wisdom. So knowledge of the book, practical activities. And most of the time, people don't have access to the actual authors. Not many of us can read a book and reach out to the author and actually get a response from it. So I like the idea of people being able to come into a Q&A session with the author. We'll sort of do a bit of a book panel thing. What questions you got for the author? You've got them there in front of you. And you say, what did you mean when you said this? I got this bit and this bit, but I don't quite understand how to integrate this in a practical way. So I think that's going to be powerful for people to be able to get access there. And then, the practical activities on the topic. So the Got concept was helping people set the ideal environment, read a nominated book over the weekend and have everyone reading the same book. So when they come together, they have the practical activities over the weekend. Then they come together with the book club and doing this curated book panel where you can Q&A the author. And I'm also thinking about making it guided activities for the month as well. This is my idea of 10 authors. So I'm going to be an author. Penny's going to be an author plus 10. So I've got 12 months of books there. So what I see is we sort of promote one book per month over the course of 12 months. So, for the month of March there, we help everyone do their getaway. They have their book-specific activities. There's monthly topics and stuff related to that, keeping people in that. And that might be driven by the author, so getting exposure for the author. And then that Q&A panel with the author as well. We can set that up pretty cool as well. So it can be the author and it can be a couple of the other authors, and we sort of ask questions so we can make a fun presentation of that. And again, I think that's going to build up exposure to a new audience. And when we have the weekend book club, we'll do posts on that. Authors will have, say a quote from their book, and we'll rotate through the 12 authors, putting different quotes up every 12 days with each of the authors. So again, getting exposed to a different audience. Because for me, one of the things when I did my book was I only had my audience. So how do I get in front of a new audience? That was always the thing that I wanted to do to build the business. So this is the author experience that sort of I'm presenting as this weekend book club. It's a 12-month program. The first 6 months is writing the book, a month to prep it, or sort of a month, 4 to 6 weeks, about 3 to 4 months writing. So 2 hours per week. So it's not going to be a ball breaker. It's just going to be blocking out those couple of hours and writing. It's about 20,000 words for a 100-page book. So that's the sort of word count you're looking at. So if you wrote 1,500 words over 4 months, you're easily ticking off that 20,000 word target. Then about 4 to 6 weeks to edit, proof, publish, package it. That'd be working with Ferry to come up with book designs, book covers, titles, subtitles. Because the other thing too for me was a challenge was coming up with subtitles. I could come up with titles, but then, subtitles, I'm trying to work out within myself. I'd love to have 10 people that I could go, what do you reckon on my subtitle? That sort of thing. And then what we'll do is promotion at the back end of that. So there's going to be 12 months of coaching, 6 months through the big book writing, then 6 months of getting this out to bigger exposure. And I see that back end business development being very much masterminding and brainstorming within the group. So again, I think it'll be nice to have this good group of people come together that are, passionate about supporting each other. And then the last part of that, we go into, the 12 months will still be rolling over of the weekend book club with the readers. So that's that sort of back end there. So that's the author experience. So any general questions? And what I was going to say was anyone who's interested in finding more about the weekend book club, as I put the concept paper together and I was writing, it ended up turning into a 5,000 Word document, which I thought was pretty funny, given that's about a quarter of the book that we're going to write. So if anyone's interested in finding out the specifics of this, no strings attached, just drop us an email and I'll send you the concept paper so you can find the details there. So has anyone got any questions about writing a book, publishing a book, the process of it, biggest challenges of it, coming up with titles? Anyone got any questions? Just push the ask a question button, I think, at the bottom of the page, bottom of your screen. Because one of the things I'm comfortable to is if you have a question that comes to mind in a couple of days, you thought, oh, geez, that was a question I probably could have asked then, just drop me an email and ask me. And I don't mind giving responses to it, whether you join me in the program or don't join me in the program. I don't mind helping out other people getting across the line. So I know that that's a possibility there as well.
Hey, Carl, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Kissy.
Hey, thank you very much for the presentation. It was super, super helpful. I have a very question about the very first start you had with the clumping and structuring your ideas. So
yep.
You have this book title, the working title in the middle of your screen, and then you're clustering around your ideas. And then you put that into boxes. And after that, you showed this Excel file. And on this Excel file, you had these sections. And my question is, how do you morph from your ideas, put them into the boxes to
yep.
the section clustering? Because this is where I'm struggling the most, because I have so many ideas. I don't know how do I put them into boxes? And what are your priorities doing this? And then how do you put that into these sections? Maybe you can help me on this.
I mean, I'm looking at it like I want to take the author on a logical journey through that thing. So that might drive a little bit of the structuring of the sections and how they are lined up. You'll generally have more ideas come up than chapters you want to put into the book. So that's why you might clump them and bring them in underneath each other. But a lot of times too, you want to get out of this book, say, a framework. From a framework, you can create workshops, you can create keynote speeches and all that sort of stuff. So for instance, Guidebook to Optimum Health, I ended up with this sort of thing. So it became like these 6 sections. So I said, okay, because I realized, and this is my subtitle, why exercise and nutrition alone are not enough. I know they're important, but there's other things. So I came up with physical activity, nutrition, detoxification, rest, mindfulness, wholeheartedness. So they became the 6 key parts. And then there might have been other things that might, lead into that. Like they might be front matter. They're not the introduction, but the other topics. So in that, there might have been, for this one, supporting tools, basic principles, general information about how do I make myself do it, getting perspective and the gene thing, stress. So there might be some other subjects that didn't fit neatly into those boxes. I'm like, okay, they're just going to be a sort of a general section. And I have that with a lot of my books where there might be some general matter that didn't fit into these other boxes. So I sort of put them off to the side. Decision-making mastery, same thing again. It sort of fitted into some clumps. So I sort of talked about, here's some examples of clumps, like the essential keys. So I talked about neuroscience, the right state on the subject matter of wisdom, getting practical with consciousness, the power of discernment, the superpower called creativity, choosing courage as your fuel of choice. What do you need to know about willpower? So they came together under essential keys. So again, I just found a title that sort of packaged those up. Then next clump was mistakes, myths, and obstacles. So I could clump a few things underneath that. And then there was the decision-making process. You know, the essence of the book is about decision-making. So I got into the decision-making process, and that was the preparation and then the actual process. So I sort of broke it down in logical sequence. And then I had another one which said important insights. So, you know, there's, you know, I had these ideas. Here's some other insights I want you to take away. Like, you know, I've got so many things to share, but these I might just do in summary form. So they might just be 2 or 3 pages. Bang, I've put those in there because I want to serve someone so that they go away and they've actually got some practical, actionable steps. I'm not trying to write an academic book. I don't care what an academic thinks of this. I don't care what the professor thinks of this. At university, I never cared about, you know, what my lecturers really thought about my assignments. I'd write whatever I had to write to get through the hoops. But I look forward to the day I could write what I wanted to write, which was, you know, my personal thing. And then the next one, quick strategies. You know, again, I wanted to, you know, finish it up with some quick strategies. So, you know, they might have been 1 or 2 pages. So look at, you know, offering, you know, the content and then, you know, wrapping it up with really practical stuff. So someone finishes it and understands where their journey is going on from there. When you're writing a personal development book, the book is service and the book is to help someone, you know, make those changes, not show off how much you know. I'm not there to show off how much I know. I'm not there to use my biggest words and pontificate and, you know, use whatever verbose vernacular so I look more intelligent and whatever. Not interested. How can I best serve the person reading this? What's the logical sequence to put these things together? And I might play around with that. And I might sort of, and I take it from all of those ideas, and then I might, my next diagram might just have the clumps. I might, do these make sense? And if I was going to number the sequence of them, what would the sequence be of them? Does the sequence make sense? And then I sling it off to a Penny and I say, hey, this is my book on this. What do you reckon about my sequence on this? Does this make sense? And Penny goes, yeah, maybe you want to shift these ones about. That didn't sort of flow for me or whatever. Is that useful to you?
That is super helpful. Thank you very much. So yeah, answering all my questions. Thank you.
Absolute pleasure. Anyone else have any other questions? So time is precious. You know, everyone's got plenty of things they can do with their time. Like I said, if a question comes to mind down the track, there's my email, carl@carlmassy.com. Just drop me a thing. If you're interested in finding out the specifics of the Weekend Book Club, and I'm going to do a very organic, I've got 5 authors already lined up. So I'm going to keep organically looking out for those other 5 authors. And my idea is that we come together and we have fun over the course of 12 months working together. So I'm in it for the fun. I'm not in it to make as much money as I can from putting together this program and getting these authors. The program I went to in Singapore where this author, this, you know, successful author did his stage thing, he was selling a 25,000 Singapore dollar program. I'm not doing that. Mine's like about $1,750. So, you know, have a look at if you're interested, have a look at it. Even if you're mildly interested, have a look. If it makes sense to you, ask me some questions and then we can take it from there. Penny, have you got anything to add to the conversation?
No, you covered it all. You covered it well. Great presentation. Thank you so much. I'm super excited. So yeah, you covered it all. So thank you so much.
Awesome. So I'm going to I've obviously got a recording of this presentation. If you can think of anyone else that you think might be interested in this, you know, share with them. What I'll do is I'll put it on my website. I think it'll just be carlmassy.com/book writing, all one word. carlmassy.com/bookwriting.com. And I'll put the recording there. And then if you want to get a copy of the concept paper, just let me know. But otherwise, thank you very much for the opportunity to impart my 10 years of writing books with you. And again, I think it's a great pursuit. One of the things that I write books for is to deepen my knowledge of a topic. So I actually write not to care that much about how many units I sell. I want to deepen my knowledge of a particular topic, and I need to understand it if I'm explaining it to someone else. So that allows me to go deeper. So that means everything, you know, whether it's me coaching, whether it's me keynote speaking, whether it's me doing training, corporate training, or public courses and that sort of stuff, I'm better prepared for those because I've gone through this process of deep diving into a particular topic. So even to get that out of it is a game changer as far as your professional capacity goes. So I'll leave you on that note. I hope that you have a fantastic start to the year. Again, thank you for taking the time out to join me for this. Have an absolutely fantastic day, morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are on the planet. All the very best, beautiful people. Have a fantastic day and take care. Ciao, everyone.
Bang.